All right, so I'm seeing a lot of newcomers enter and they're asking questions through comments, and there's a lot of curiosity around Pokemon at the moment. However, there is a few traps to avoid for Pokemon collecting and investing in 2026, and I'll be walking you through some of those things to avoid throughout this video. The biggest problem right now is that we are in somewhat of a limbo. You have one side who believe Pokemon was overhyped last year, and that in 2026, a lot of that hype and overinflation from last year is going to begin retracing. And then you actually have a lot of other people who think this year is going to be another massive, massive hype cycle, similar to what we had in 2025. And because of the 30th anniversary and all these things coming about, they really have high expectations for this year. Now, to be fair, I actually think there's a little bit of both at play, and I really don't want to sound like I'm just sitting on the fence, though I think we have to be a little bit honest when we do a bit of a overview of what's happening. So the drive of popularity from late 2024 to all the way through all of 2025 was essentially because there were three areas that collided, and they collided all at the right time to cause this reaction. Essentially, the three things at play were the fact that Pokemon TCG Pocket released, Prismatic Evolutions released, and Pokemon also couldn't keep up with the demand, which ironically caused more demand. Now let's just break this down. In November of 2024, Pokemon TCG Pocket released, which was essentially a massive moment which brought a huge amount of people into the game. However, naturally the players from Pocket also got interested in the physical TCG, and then they just started collecting, and a huge new audience entered from there. Now, Prismatic Evolutions released in January of 2025. Prismatic was the first set after Evolving Skies, which was going to feature Evolutions. Now, just so you can understand why this is so important, Evolving Skies was the Evolution themed set from 2021 that sold out and prices just ballooned. Everyone who was collecting Pokemon during this time said, hey, listen, the next time an Evolution set releases, that's gonna be the set to invest in. That's gonna be the most collectible Pokemon set that's about to release. It was super hyped even before it came to market. And a huge amount of returning people who were collecting during Evolving Skies, they all started coming back into the TCG because Prismatic Evolutions was about to release, which they all thought, hey, that's a big tick, that's a check, because hey, guess what? It's an Evolution themed set. And I know a lot of collectors were actually saving up and ready to buy Prismatic Evolutions before we even had any reveals of the cards. And I actually know this really well because I was creating content during this period, and I saw the hype for Prismatic Evolutions, and I was really involved in what was happening with the community. But then here's the ironic part. Because all the new fans were coming in from TCG Pocket, and then you had all these older fans and people who were collecting at the time save up and they were ready for Prismatic Evolutions, Pokemon products all started selling out, and then everyone got interested, and because everything was already sold out and prices were rising like crazy, then people from the outside started looking in and they were like, what's going on? I want to now collect Pokemon. And then that created a separate wave of hype, so you can just imagine the chaos. That's why I think for 2026, it's actually going to be challenging to see that hype enter like that again, because you kind of needed so many things right at the same time. And that's why I want to say, if there is some momentum that builds this year, it's probably a good thing for you to be aware some of the traps with Pokemon collecting and Pokemon investing that you should be aware of, because 2026 definitely will be a year of excitement for the TCG. It's just a matter of, will it be as popular as 2025 because of the 30th anniversary? So a trap that you want to avoid is not researching your cards before you send them to get graded. This is a big thing I've noticed that people do, and people just send cards in to get graded without doing any research. Though one thing that's happened, especially during the Scarlet and Violet era, is that Pokemon cards have become harder to grade, and some cards in the Sword and Shield era, which have like over 70% chance to get returned as a PSA 10, well, in the Scarlet and Violet era and the Mega Evolution era, a lot of these cards have become much more difficult to get PSA 10s. I mean, even if we look at Moonbreon from Sword and Shield and then compare it to the Umbreon from Prismatic Evolutions, you can clearly see the massive difference in PSA 10 chances. So it's very important to understand this before you just send any card to get graded. For example, Magikarp from Paldea Evolved has less than a 20% chance to be returned returned as a PSA 10. So it's something you need to keep in mind as it's just an important part of the hobby. Now, in terms of researching how to grade your cards, there is a cool tool known as Sushi Grade, who are also the sponsors of today's video. Now, Sushi Grade is a fantastic analytics platform designed for Pokemon card collectors who care about researching and making smarter grading decisions. You can search and see which cards have the best chance to be graded as a PSA 10. But you can actually expand on that info because within the grading tab, it actually highlights the cards with the biggest profit potential when graded. Sushi Grade also has cool additional features like a cross-grading section. Here you can see which cards would actually gain a profit if they got cross-graded. If you love card grading and want to have a lot of key information in one space, check out Sushi Grade. You can also unlock the premium features by using the code on screen. It will save you 10% off your first month. Big thanks to Sushi Grade for supporting the channel. Now let's jump back into the video. Now, another area that you want to avoid is thinking that, I'm not going to pre-order my products because prices will come down a little bit later on, and thinking you're going to get a better price on sealed product by waiting for things to calm down. Like I was saying earlier in the video, since late 2024, the best price you'll ever get on sealed product is pre-ordering the set for retail price. So the reason why some people think waiting is a better idea is because before 2024, or early 2024 and before that, usually the price for pre-order was actually a little bit more expensive because when stores had a lot of stock lying around, they would eventually drop the price a few months after, and then you would actually be able to get a better price on booster boxes. Well, guess what? That doesn't happen anymore. We probably will enter that era sometime in the future, but for now, it's just not the case. And the best prices you're gonna get is if you pre-order the product. Yes, you're gonna probably be paying either retail price or a little bit above retail price. Don't forget that retail price has also gone up, though at least you're gonna get the product and not pay scalper prices. Now, it depends where you buy. Some stores are like charging exorbitant amounts pretty much straight off the get-go for pre-orders, and people are gonna pay that because Pokemon cards are so in demand. But if you're buying from major retailers, you're probably gonna pay maximum $10 above the retail price. So I've actually found that if you're around when pre-orders get announced, that if you're there in the first few days, you can secure a product because nearly every store at the moment, not all of them, but a lot of major retailers have put purchasing and pre-order limits. So if you're there in the first few days, you should be able to secure your product with a pre-order. And like I said, you will pay either retail price or maximum $10 above, depending on the store. So that is a little bit of a cool thing that has happened, that you can guarantee product. The thing is though, you probably won't be able to get a lot of product, and that's changed a lot. So early 2024, 2023, you could buy a case of products, right? That wasn't that difficult. These days, it can be a little bit harder to get that. It's usually a purchase limit of like 1 or 2 booster boxes per person. I'm actually a fan of the restrictions at the moment because I feel they need to be in place for now until things calm down, if they do, or if more product comes around. Either way, one area has to kind of improve before the restrictions can leave from these major retailers. So like I said, if you do see a product and you can pre-order it, that at the moment and how it's been behaving lately, that's probably the best price you're gonna get, unless things change in the future. But right now, like I said, for all the last sets that I've gotten, the best price I got was the pre-order pricing. Everything after that is more challenging. Now, another area to avoid, especially in 2026, is buying into artificial spikes. Now, you'll hear me talk about this a lot on the channel, and the reason why I speak about it so much is because it's a really common problem, and I personally don't think this is a topic that shouldn't be spoken about enough. In fact, I think that it's a very good reminder for everyone, and it's gonna happen a lot throughout this year. You are gonna see a lot of like sealed product. You're gonna see a lot of Pokemon singles spike. Now, just so you know how spikes usually work, there's a few reasons. Sometimes it can be because of hype and everyone just realizes at the same time that something was undervalued. That can happen. That happened with Crown Zenith, and it spiked very quickly because everyone at the same time realized, wait, Crown Zenith was awesome. Why are all these Scarlet and Violet era products rising? What about Crown Zenith? And then it had a very quick spike, similar to Paldea Evolved with the Bubble New. That kind of happened at the same time as well. Sometimes then you'll get people who try to do market manipulation where they'll find the single that they like and they artificially buy it out and then they dump it and they make for profit. That's why if you are seeing those spikes, you don't want to be the person who just starts buying into those artificial spikes. This is so important because it can save people a lot of money. So just the easiest thing and the best rule of thumb, if you see a single literally double or triple in price within a week or 2-week period. Avoid it like the plague. Don't worry about it. If you think you're gonna miss out and now it's now or never, then I can probably guarantee you that it's your first time that you've seen that, because if you look at any of these artificial spikes that have happened, so few remain. So just a very important thing to avoid. Now, a lot of people who collect English Pokemon cards are also interested in Japanese cards, though an area to be mindful of is that if a card is rising or very popular in the English TCG, it doesn't actually mean the Japanese version is going to be expensive as well, and vice versa. So Japanese and English TCGs, they actually have different preferences of what they like, and a real common thing is people see if a card is really, really wanted in the English TCG, that just means the Japanese version must be expensive as well, and everyone wants it as well. But sometimes that's not the case, and the same goes with Japanese cards as well. Sometimes cards that are very popular for Japanese audiences, that won't actually translate that much in the English TCG as well. So if you are adding Japanese Pokemon cards to your collection, which a lot of people do, and there's a lot of reasons why you should be adding Japanese cards to your collection, because I could name so many reasons just off the top of my head. There's quality control. So Japanese Pokemon cards have incredibly good quality control. In fact, so good that most Japanese Pokemon cards have like an 80% to a 90% chance to be returned as a PSA 10. There's also the fact that they do have guaranteed hit rates for every booster box, whereas English does not have that. That's why opening Japanese cards is really fun, because you know that there's something guaranteed in your box, which I really like. And I think, to be honest, I actually wouldn't mind if English slowly introduced something like that. At this stage, they've never done that, but I think that's why there is a big audience for Japanese Pokemon cards. And also, a lot of the time, they are a bit cheaper, just depending on the product. Some Japanese cards can be more expensive. But I think the big thing, especially if you are adding Japanese to your collectibles, which is awesome, and if you do that, that's a really good decision as well. Anyone that collects Japanese Pokemon cards, as soon as they see them, they just go, wow, they look incredible. Just don't get tripped out and think, oh, if it's popular in the English TCG, that means it's going to be popular in the Japanese TCG as well. You just have to research. There's so many tools out there. You just want to always be making sure that you're researching your cards before you're spending a lot of money on them, because the more research you do, the more confident you can be with your purchases. Because Pokemon cards are so expensive, you do need to be a little bit more mindful when purchasing them. But of course, like all things, the more research you do, the more confident you'll be able to be when you buy anything, a booster box, a graded card, Japanese card, whatever you buy, as long as you've kind of done a little bit of that research beforehand, just so you're confident in that purchase and you don't want to just be buying things haphazardly. Because the 30th anniversary is coming this year, there is a high likelihood that there's going to be a lot of hype in the hobby. Though for some reason, like I mentioned at the start of the video, I just don't see it being as popular as 2025, because like all those perfect situations met at the same time. And that's really what happened in 2020 as well with the vintage boom. And of course, like I said, with early 2025, you had all those three areas that collided at the same time, and it was perfectly at that nexus point. So in 2026, we would need a few areas to cross over right at the same time. And literally right now, the only one we have at the moment is the 30th anniversary, which I personally think will be super popular, but maybe not to the levels that we had. However, there is a few areas for the future of Pokemon investing I believe will happen in 2026, and I cover that in this video that I've placed for you on screen here. If you're interested, click the video that's appearing on screen. You can learn more about it there. I really appreciate you watching the video, and I'll see you on the next video.